I parked my old car between a fancy black Porsche and a white Tesla. Their doors slammed shut, loud and flashy, mine closed softly, just like me. It had been 9 years since I last visited the Alden family home. 9 years since I quietly left without yelling or arguing. Back then, all I had was an idea, a laptop, and a watch I still wear today. Now I'm 34. I wore a plain navy dress I brought from Seattle. Nothing special, just simple and clean. I came alone, no boyfriend, no friends, just me, Sabrina. The front door was already open. I heard loud, elegant laughter inside. I walked in. The same big chandelier still hung above the long oak dining table, 16 chairs, crystal glasses, silverware, the smell of meat and wine filled the air. Everything was the same, except for me. My mom, Sylvia Alden, sat at the head of the table. She looked flawless, but cold. She smiled at me, but not kindly. It was more like a warning. "Well," she said loudly, "the disappointing daughter is back." People laughed. My brother Malcolm, the clever lawyer with the sharp mouth, cousin Ethan, always bragging about his job, Malcolm's wife Lydia, who once said the secret to success was marrying someone rich. I stayed quiet. Then Mom said, "You embarrass this family." No one seemed shocked, some nodded, others looked away. I didn't respond. I just sat in the only empty chair, next to a chair no one wanted and in front of a silver plate no one offered me. Malcolm raised his glass. "To high standards," he said, smirking. I didn't raise mine. No one seemed to notice. Or maybe they did, and that's why it mattered. I looked at my watch, still ticking, still mine. I remembered a family photo from Malcolm's graduation at Yale, everyone dressed up, smiling, holding champagne. I was standing off to the side, not really part of it. I was 22. I had just finished my computer science degree from NYU, not an Ivy League school, so they didn't care. I had a small job working with military data. I told them at brunch. Mom blinked. "That's different," she said. Dad didn't even look up from his phone. "You know, Sabrina," he said, "you could still use some connections. Georgetown Law has openings this summer." I nodded and said nothing. The next day, I left. No fighting, no crying, just silence. I didn't slam any doors or say goodbye. I packed 2 bags, took a bus to Brooklyn, with a one-way ticket and a dream nobody believed in. That's when I started my company, Arcadia. I worked out of a tiny apartment with bad plumbing but great coffee. I used an old MacBook to write code. I gave online presentations to almost empty Zoom calls. I got rejected 57 times before one woman, a former spy analyst turned investor, gave me a chance. She gave me $200,000 and a simple leather watch. She said, "You'll need this to track more than time, track your milestones." I wear that watch every day. When we landed our first big government contract, I sent a letter to my parents to share the news. 3 weeks later, Mom replied. It was short and cold. "Don't use the Alden name on anything that might fail." No congratulations, no phone call. I kept that letter. I even put it in a frame. Whenever things got hard, I looked at it. When I got rejected, I read it again. Every time Arcadia grew, from $10 million to $100 million to $2 billion, I used that letter to remind myself. Not to go back to them, but to see how far I'd come. I didn't return to Connecticut. Not for birthdays, not for funerals. Not when Lydia had twins. Not even when Dad had a stroke and Malcolm said, "Family matters." They never invited me. And I never asked to be invited. Until now. Sitting at their table, surrounded by fake smiles and expensive plates, I looked at the faces that once told me I'd fail. And I remembered, I wasn't here for them. I was here for something else. Something quiet. Something that felt like closure. Dinner was veal. It always was. Veal with mushroom risotto on fancy plates, the same ones Mom brought back from Milan the year she forgot my birthday. I hadn't eaten veal in years. I just picked at my food. Malcolm talked about closing a big business deal. He held his fork like a judge's gavel and his pride like a trophy. Lydia bragged. "I'm the youngest partner at the firm." Her voice sparkled like the chandelier above us. Cousin Ethan talked over everyone, complaining about his money manager. He waved his wine glass like he was leading an orchestra. Mom sat at the head of the table, smiling, guiding the conversation. When she looked at me, she asked, "Still working in technology?" "Not your company." Not cybersecurity. Just working. I nodded. Still building systems. That got their attention. Ethan asked. What kind of systems? Apps? Websites? Crypto? I could have told them Arcadia handles 15% of the government's secure cloud. But I didn't. Before I could answer, Malcolm jumped in, joking about how I used to stay up late on an old Dell computer. Mom smiled and said, "We thought it was just a phase." Lydia asked if I still worked alone or had a team. Arcadia had 300 employees and an office in Tokyo. We were about to bid for a NATO contract. But I kept it simple. "No, I have help." Malcolm gave a cold smile. "Someday you'll get a real job," he said. Everyone chuckled, polite, but cruel. Then Mom said softly, "Sabrina always finds her own path." Different again. Still not one of them. Malcolm raised his glass with a fake smile. "To the rebels and the family, hope you come back before it's too late." I didn't respond, I just looked at my watch. Still ticking, still mine. Ethan leaned in. "My firm supports startups," he said. "You can pitch to us." He winked. "I'd be happy to invest in your little project." Little project? I looked at him. "It's not little." He laughed. "Oh really? Then why haven't we heard of it?" I paused, then said quietly, "Maybe you weren't listening." The table went silent. Lydia laughed, surprised. "She's got fire." Mom refilled someone's wine and smiled. "We're just joking, sweetheart, it's all in fun." But it didn't feel like fun. Dessert came, fig tarts with honey and cream. I didn't touch mine. Malcolm started talking about a court case in Miami when there was a quiet knock at the door. My assistant, Jillian, walked in wearing black. She only dressed like that when we had a plan. She came to my side and whispered, "Ms. Alden, the jet is ready. The pilot needs confirmation for Tokyo." Lydia dropped her fork. It clinked loudly, but I stayed calm. "Thank you," I said, folding my napkin. "Tell Captain Reyes we're on schedule. We'll stop in San Francisco for the board vote. I'll join the call on the way." Jillian nodded and left. The room went completely still. Not just awkward silence, frozen silence, like no one could breathe. Ethan blinked. Malcolm looked like he wanted to say something. Mom sat up straighter, like she was trying to regain control. Finally, Malcolm asked, "A jet?" I gently wiped my mouth with my napkin. "Gulfstream. We use it for long trips. Arcadia signed a deal in Tokyo last quarter." "Arcadia?" Ethan repeated. "My company," I said simply. Mom squinted. "You have a jet?" "I have a company," I replied. "The jet just saves time." Malcolm tried to laugh, but it sounded weak. "So, you run a real business?" I pulled out my phone and opened the Bloomberg app. "Look," I said, sliding it across the table. The headline read, "Arcadia Cloud secures $900 billion defense infrastructure contract with Department of Homeland Security." It showed a photo of me at a press event in Washington, D.C. Ethan leaned in closer. "That's you?" I nodded. "Calm. No need to brag." Mom reached for the phone but stopped. Her hand shook a little. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked softly. "Would it have made a difference?" I replied. No one moved. No one touched their desserts. Even the air felt heavy. I looked at my watch, still ticking. Still mine. Malcolm spoke first, his voice tight, like a lawyer under pressure. "That article could be exaggerated," he said, pointing at my phone. I tilted my head. "You think Bloomberg makes up government contracts?" He didn't reply. He just looked away. Ethan kept reading. His lips moved as he tried to process what he was seeing. His face changed as the numbers sank in. "Arcadia's size, our contracts, our value. 5.8 billion, he whispered. "No," I said quietly. "We passed 6 last month." Lydia reached for her wine but missed the glass. Mom sat up straighter, trying to stay composed. Her eyes stayed on where my phone had been. Then she asked, "You built this all by yourself?" "Not by myself," I said. "Just without any of you." Malcolm gave a dry laugh. He started talking about family, saying I should have told them, that they could have helped. But I remembered the meeting he had with Dad when I was 25, when they called me a liability and said to leave me out of the family newsletter. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, You thought I was bad for the Alden name. I heard you. Mom looked up at me. Families say things they don't mean. I pulled a folded paper from my wallet, old, worn, but kept safe. I slid it across the table. Her letter. 3 years old. Typed. Signed. Cold. You told me not to use the Alden name on anything that might fail. She didn't touch it. Just stared at it. Ethan leaned forward again, suddenly interested. He started talking about tech and partnerships, asking about funding. I let him talk, then said, "We're not raising money." Lydia tried to smooth things over. She said if they'd known, maybe they would have supported me. I looked at her, not angry, just tired. They were your people. Just not mine. Mom's hand hovered over the letter again, but didn't touch it. She couldn't. Not because of what I did, but because picking it up meant admitting she wrote it. My phone buzzed. Jillian. Right on time. I stood up, folded my napkin, and set it beside the untouched dessert. I have a board vote in 6 hours. We're bidding for a NATO contract. I walked toward the door. Then Mom's voice cut through the silence, sharp, almost desperate. Why tonight, Sabrina? Why come at all? I paused in the doorway, still facing away from them. To see if anything had changed, I said. Then I turned around one last time. It hasn't. I stepped into the hallway. Behind me, the dining room stayed still, like a stage after the show ends, but the actors don't know what to do next. Then, finally, the scramble began. Malcolm was the first to speak, always quick to change direction. Sabrina, wait, maybe we should talk investments. If Arcadia's growing, we could work together. I turned just enough for him to see my face. You mean now that you believe I matter? He stayed quiet. Ethan stepped forward. I always believed in you, he said. I knew you were smart, I just didn't know. He stopped. You didn't know I stopped needing your approval a long time ago, I said. Lydia gave a tight smile. If you're ever hiring, I've actually been looking into tech-related jobs. I looked at her. She used to laugh when I talked about my work. Once, she told a friend I worked with screens. Can you name one programming language? I asked. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked away. Finally, Sylvia stood. She walked toward me slowly, more for control than grace. You're angry, she said. I get it, but don't let pride close the doors that family can open. That word again, family. You had 9 years to open that door, I said. You chose to paint it shut. Her voice softened, sounding almost like a mother. You're still in Alden, that means something. To you, I said. Not to the world I built. She flinched, barely, but I saw it. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. Don't, I said. This isn't a fight, it's a boundary. My phone buzzed. Jillian, it was time. I calmly put on my coat. At the front door, I paused and looked back, not at them, but at the house. So quiet, so heavy. You always thought I left because I wasn't good enough, I said. But I left because I finally realized I didn't need to pass your tests. I created my own. I opened the door. The car waited outside. Engine quiet, driver ready. The cold air didn't touch me anymore. The wind tugged at my coat as I walked. The car was already warm inside. The driver took my bag without saying a word. Jillian had chosen well, calm, efficient, invisible. Behind me, I heard the door creak open. They were still watching. Of course they were. Families like mine only chase what they've already lost. I slid into the back seat. Smooth leather, quiet, peaceful. As the car pulled away, I didn't look back. Not at the house, not at the people. The silence in the car felt different. It wasn't tense. It was mine, I earned it. I glanced at my wristwatch. The minute hand moved forward. Still ticking. Still mine. The next morning, the messages came. Lydia sent a LinkedIn request. Malcolm left a voicemail. We should reconnect. Family synergy has value. Ethan sent a long email about collaborative innovation. And Sylvia sent a handwritten letter by courier. Heavy paper, every word full of guilt. We should rebuild. You've made us proud. I didn't reply. I forwarded each message to Jillian with just 2 words. Block list. That night, a delivery arrived at the Alden house. 1 box. No card. Inside was the letter Sylvia once wrote me, folded beside a photo. A photo of their dinner table, taken from outside the window. My seat, empty. A single note read, "I was there. You just didn't see me." Some of us were never truly invited to the table, but we remember who looked away. You don't have to explain. Just leave one word they never said to me.